Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. I'm going to share with you an interesting point. Remember how we've always said that secular liberalists have got a jihad, a crusade against the Muslim world, and that is they want every single Muslim world to coincide with the values and beliefs of the West. So, for example, if those Muslim countries don't believe in secular democratic values and human rights, then it is now an obligation for the West to send NGOs to that country, to boycott that country, to threaten that country with sanctions if it doesn't comply. And ultimately, if none of those things work, then it is now an obligation to go and bomb that country into the Stone Age if it doesn't comply. And I've been saying this for many years now. This is what we call Western jihad, Western extremism. This is never spoken about by Western critics against Islam. People like Robert Spencer, Pauline Hanson, Ayaan Ali Hirsi. Why are these people silent on Western jihad? I mean, imagine for a moment, folks, that a Muslim group said, we're going to force our own moral values on the rest of the Western countries. We're going to bring Sharia law and we're going to force it upon you. We're going to kill you. We're going to put sanctions. We're going to boycott you. And if none of that works, we're going to then come and kill you until you accept our values. You'd call that extremism. You'd call that terrorism. You call that all sorts of things. Listen to an article by the ABC News. It says, the Taliban wants to be recognized by the world, and it titles, Should Western Countries Engage with It? It's written by Tracy Shelton. I quote, it says, in their first press conference since seizing power in Kabul, the Taliban last week reaffirmed their desire for diplomatic relations with all countries of the world. It says, quoting the Taliban, we want good relations, we want a good economy, we want goods trading, we want good diplomacy, spokesman Zaibullah Mujahid said. And then Tracy writes, but there is a catch. What is the catch? In return, we want our values to be respected. Did you notice that, folks? So what the Taliban is saying is, we want good relations, we want a good economy, we want good trading, we want good diplomacy between us and the West, but all we ask in return that you respect our values to be respected, meaning that our beliefs, our values are different from yours. Just like you don't want us to force our values on you, come to your country and force our values on you, then you don't come forcing your values on us, and you respect our values. And even if you disagree with it, then keep your disagreement to yourself, but don't force your secular ideology on us. If you think that we believe in different human rights to you, then your belief is your belief, our belief is our belief. But we need to learn to respect each other's values And if you believe our values impinge against human rights, then if those people don't want to live with us, they can come to your country if they want. But this is our land, this is our laws. You need to respect the law of the land, and this is how we want our law of the land to be. Simple. A simple understanding between two nations. But no, the West doesn't accept that. It says there's a catch. Right? Tracy says there's a catch. Let's continue reading. Some Western powers like the European Union have signalled that they would be willing to work with Taliban leaders on some matters if they can demonstrate they respect human rights. So they can work in diplomacy, they can work if they respect human rights. If they respect what kind of human rights? The human rights that are accepted by the West. So for example, if the Taliban or the Afghanis, for example, if they reject homosexuality, then no, there's no diplomacy, there's no economic talks, you disagree with our values, we're no longer going to trade with you, we're no longer going to recognise you as civil people, there's going to be no more negotiation, and quite frankly, we're going to continue to go to war with you until you submit. Imagine, folks, imagine, like, we complain when terrorist groups like ISIS, for example, say, we're not going to respect the infidels until they submit to Sharia law. But we're like, oh, look at these radicals, look at these terrorist groups, look at these extremist fanatics. But then look at the secular West. Aren't they extremists where they're forcing you their values? I mean, in Australia, for example, if you were to force your Islamic interpretation or your religious values, they'd be like, how dare you? You need to respect the law of the land. How dare you bring your Sharia law here and try and impose it on us? This is Australia. We live by our rules. This is the way we preserve our culture. The law of the land is supreme. And every law and value should be respected. And they say, well, if you disagree with Australian law, go live in the Middle East. If you want to go practice your values, go into another Muslim country. Go practice them there. But then if you want to go practice them there, you can't, because now the West is getting involved and saying, no, we're not going to recognise you anymore. No more economic trades, no more this, no more that, because, you disagree with what we believe are human rights and you impinge on human rights. Therefore, because you're not complying to our human rights values, then we're not going to recognise you. So this is what we call hypocrisy, double standards, extremism, and secular liberalism forcing its own moral values on the Muslim world by the sword. Have a look at this part in the article. It says, while Russia still lists the Taliban as a terrorist, President Vladimir Putin encouraged other countries to establish relations with Afghanistan's new leaders, which is the Taliban, the new Taliban. And listen to this part. It says, quote, I'll highlight it. It says, and to stop the irresponsible policy of imposing alien values from the outside. So even Vladimir Putin can see that the reason why most of these wars are being caused is because the West is trying to impose its values on another country from the outside. There you have it. It's in black and white. Okay, let's continue because this part's going to get even more interesting. And remember what I spoke about, how the West then puts sanctions on another country, on a Muslim country, if that country does not agree to Western values. So look at this part. It says, meanwhile, the US continues to interact daily with the Taliban commanders in coordinating evacuations from Kabul airport. Listen to this part. President Joe Biden said the US would support the Afghan people with diplomacy, our international influence, and our humanitarian aid. Listen to this part now. I'm going to highlight it again. It says, quote, but the Biden administration also froze Afghan government reserves held in US bank accounts, blocking the Taliban from accessing billions of dollars. Now, this money, the billions of dollars, belongs to the Afghan government. Now, the Taliban are in control of the Afghan government. But look at this. The US is blocking this money. The US is blocking this money. Now, this money is actually the government's. It now belongs to the Taliban, right? And so why are they holding this money? This is theft. If you're blocking and freezing this money from the government, that's theft. That's their money. That belongs to the people of Afghanistan, this money. And so what they'll now do is they'll use this against them. So they'll say, okay, so you don't believe in LGBTIQ rights? Yeah, no, we don't believe in that. Okay, well, I'm not going to give you back this money unless you believe in LGBTIQ rights. Oh, but hang on, that's my money. That belongs to our people, that belongs to our government. Yeah, I know it does, but I'm not going to give it back to you unless you believe in that. Hang on, sir, but that's theft. That money belongs to me. No, but you need to believe in our democratic, secular, liberal values. So again, you see, this is their crusade. This is their secular, liberal crusade. Like I said, they will force another country to comply. I mean, can you imagine a strong, let's say there was a huge Islamic country out there, let's say like Saudi Arabia, and it said to America, look, we're holding all your funds, in our bank accounts, but we're not going to give it back to you unless you bring in Saudi laws into your country, Islamic laws into your country, and these laws are Sharia-based laws. So we need Sharia courts in your country. We need people to be governed by Sharia laws. And if you don't respect those Sharia laws, then we're not going to return your money. Also, we want to have Muslim representatives in your council, in your government, part of your political system, Muslim representatives. And if you don't put Muslim representatives in your government, then we're not going to release these funds back to you. You'd say, oh my God, this is Islamization into America. They're trying to take over our constitution. They're trying to change our laws. They want to Islamicize the West. We would not even hear the end of it. You would say, these are foreign donations, sanctions, trying to change our policy. And yet, as a Westerner, you accept your government putting sanctions on another country because that country's values don't coincide with yours, and you accept that, but then you're a double-faced hypocrite when you wouldn't like that done to you, and your values and your country, and yet you point a finger at Islamists and say, they're trying to Islamicize the rest of the world, and, we need to close our borders. We can't let Muslims coming into our country because they're Islamicizing it. Hang on a minute. So how dare you not speak against your own government for trying to secularize the rest of the Muslim world? So this war in Afghanistan was never about, eradicating Osama bin Laden and getting rid of terrorism. This has always been an ideological war where the West wanted to always impose its own moral values on the rest of the globe and trying to secularize it into their way of thinking. That's what it's about. And it is a religious war. It's a secular liberalism is now a religion. It's a religion of atheism, liberalism, secularism. And so their NGOs, their whole objective is to submit the world to what they believe is their definition of human rights. And that's it. And so it will be a continuous war between Islam and the West. It will not end, because the West is not prepared to accept differences of opinion. They're not willing to accept that their values has to be different from everyone. They're not willing to accept that. Their objective is to superimpose their values on the rest of the globe, and they'll do it. And this is what we call leftist radicalism. So, for example, if women in Afghanistan, for example, have segregated schools, schools for women, and then you have schools for men, no, that's discrimination. It can't just be schools. That's not good enough. It needs to be intermingling. It needs to be the opposite sex can both be in the same school together. So Islamic principles are outdated. We can't accept this. If the Taliban want to come in, because the first Taliban didn't allow schools for women, now they're allowing it. And they're segregating it, so men on one side, women... No, it can't be segregated now. It's got to be together. Because that's what we believe in the West. We believe the intermingling between men and women, and there can't be any discrimination. Therefore, men and women need to be together. LGBTIQ rights. Yep, they can parade in the street. You can be a free gay person. You can't be discriminated against. They're our values. Women, can't be, there's no dress code. Anything goes. Women are not ordered to wear the burqa or the niqab. That's against human rights. But, in the West, we also have a dress code. That's fine. If you go naked in the street, we can arrest you for that. In France, if you wear the burqa or the niqab, you can be arrested for that. So we have our own moral values. We put our own judgments. We can punish people who don't agree with us. But you know what? If Afghanistan, if that government has its own policies that we disagree with, but you know what? No, they can't do that. And if they do, we're going to put sanctions and we're going to bomb them. Makes sense, doesn't it now? Makes a lot of sense. And if those Islamists come to our country demanding and trying to change our policies, that's Islamization, that's radicalization, that's impinging on our values. But, we can impinge on their values. We can do that because, that makes a lot of sense. Because, who doesn't want our human rights? Who doesn't want our values? Because our values are superior to everyone else. Therefore, they must submit. And if they don't submit, we will kill them. We will execute them through drone strikes. We'll put sanctions. We'll freeze their monies in our bank accounts, and we'll make them pay for it. But we're not really radical or extremists. We're not terrorists ourselves. We're civilized human beings, unlike those terrorists. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?